Okay, so I started the recording. Welcome everyone. This is the second part of the animation process that I presented 2 weeks ago. We'll get into more advanced stuff. But first we'll go through not necessarily advanced stuff, but maybe some tools that will definitely help you, which I use a lot. And also, as last time, I will try and give you examples of how I did it, where I used it, and how you can use this to your advantage. Okay, so first, I presented to you last time how you can build an animation from an existing one, and then how you can make a scratch from an already existing SQL, so skeleton that already exists. Now we'll go into the next part when you'll need to build your own SQL. For example, if you want extra bones in your unit, you'll need to make your own SQL, and therefore you need to do your whole set of animations, even though if that means to take animations from an already existing one. But you'll need to do the full set anyway. The most common example that I have used for was adding a cape to an already existing SQL. Most notably Legolas. I was always bothered in the Battle for Middle-earth that Legolas didn't have a cape, but Gimli and Aragorn did. So when you had all three of them was kind of meh, that Legolas was the only one that didn't have a cape. And also what bothered me even more, I guess, was that Legolas didn't have a full toggle for him. So switch blade to knives and bow, which personally I think would have been useful, especially when he was moved to the Elven faction in Battle for Middle-earth 2. So that's also a thing that I used so I could build my own skeleton with all the pieces that were missing and then animate everything, but also import the animations that were already existing. Right, so first part, creating your own skeleton and what to look for. The most easy way, and I think it's the most recommended for me at least, is that to try to combine SQLs that already exist. For example, if you want to add capes to your models, you can try and add the bones, let's say, from a set that already have capes. For example, if you want to do Legolas and you want to add capes, you could try and add the capes and bones from Faramir. So if I run 3ds Max 8, and let's say, okay, my Legolas already has, but maybe I have the original Legolas. So this is like the original one, and I import his SQL. And now I'll hide this one and import. I don't know if I have like anything that already has like cape animations, like Aragorn's ones. I know I did use Aragorn's one at one point. Okay, I'll go to the heavy soldiers. And let's say Enim Sword, which is like Boromir's. Okay, not Faramir, Boromir. Let's take Boromir's one. So you can see we have the bones. You do see, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you just take this part and then unhide all, and bam, now Legolas has cape animations. Obviously that means when you create a new animation, you need to import that animation as well, which you could use in a multiple ways. I will show you soon. But in case you need more bones, what you can do is you can use boxes. That's the easy way in. You can use a box. Let's say I'll have Legolas with 3 knives. instead of 2. So these 2 are the knives, and I'll add a third one. The tricky part to do this is go to the tools and select the W3D tools, or W3D. I realized the last stream I said W3D because it was easier for me, but it's W3D from Westwood 3-dimensional. And just select the transform bone. So now if we export this, we'll export it as a bone. And I do recommend to export it before using it for other purposes. So now if I'll go export, select W3D, I'll try and save it somewhere. Save it to the Banner Carriers. We'll call it new. Well, obviously you should use something like, for example, in my mode I use was Legolas _SQL. And what you need to do is just select skeleton. No, nothing fancy, just select skeleton. Okay, now if I delete it, import file, I see the Legolas SQL here. And the problem was that only this bone got selected because I forgot to select export transform for the other bones. So we started it. Okay, I'll just export it like this. So now I need to export all of these bones. Make sure all of the bones have this. Again, file export, overwrite file. Now if I delete this and import it again, this is my SQL. Another thing you should be careful is the naming of the bones, because this cannot be changed once you use the SQLs for other animations. All the animations need to have the naming conventions you put it here. If you forgot and you realized halfway through that this was named box 1, it's better if you leave it like this. That's why you need to be extra careful when you export it. So let's say try to be consistent. So this one is be Swordbone 2. This will be Swordbone 3. I don't know, Legolas probably will grow a hand on the course of this training. Okay, so nothing fancy about creating your own skeleton except these. Make sure you have stuff like that. Yeah, like I said, if you create a new SQL, you need to take care of all the animations and then take care of the export settings, which I just showed you. You just needed to flag it as a SQL, and then you can use it in your new animations. Right. Any questions until now?
To me, it's all clear.
Amazing. Right, so things to look out when you're creating a full set of animations, especially for your own SQL. Like I said in the previous video, use a reference set that you would like, and a set of mandatory animations. Like I said before opening this course, when I made the banner carrier, I took as reference the banner carriers from the good factions. And my mandatory set of animations was the final one. But what I ended up doing was doing the 22 animations that the original banner carrier has. So I know what animations I need at the end of the day. So I have a list. Actually, I think I can also show you the list. 1 second. It's a list I have with all animations, but I can unflag this. Have a look at the end. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is my list of banner carry animation. What would have looked like in first stages was all of them were red, and as you know, as I progressed and made the animations, I would either flag it as yellow, meaning yellow. Well, actually, more like orange. Yeah. Which meant that I started it and probably you reached a point that was working, but there still needs improvement on it. Or it's green when it's like final. Yeah, the animation is done. Doesn't need anything to add to it. It's done. That's why here was all. And as you can see, I also make like a short description, like alerted and afraid, attack, selected idle, deselected. Sometimes these are helpful when you want to reference another animation, but you don't know what GTPA means. So you look, get up, and it's like, okay, I look to the get up of the other animation. What kind of mood or what animation I'm starting from, which is also very important. So this phase will also be of need when you're creating, and these were like the mandatory ones I needed. I think Legolas's ones are also here. Okay, this is front. Well, I think I might have placed the Legolas one in a separate file. 1 second, let me check. Okay, this is like the index list. Okay, this is an older version, but it gets passes what I wanted to do. These are way more animations, just because the toggle itself. So you had 2 weapon sets, the knives and the bow. So I recreated the whole list and also added like, let's say the index part. So attack D would be in like extra attack from the first 2, because 1, 2, and 3 is used for the bow animation. As you can see, I also write down what kind of action is that. It's like preparing to attack, which is the pre-delay for, let's say, if you're working in Sage, is the pre-delay animation. Then the continuing fire, which is like continuing attacking, and then back to idle, which is like the finished attacking part. And all of this is gone. And also I put notes in, like I was using motion capture, so I put like this will be used motion capture, and then the idle one that said like use Return of the King reference, which is like from the Return of the King game, which I actually went into the game, filmed some videos on how the animation was there, and then recreated in the 3ds Max. So you can use all kind of shortcuts, and you know, this is my way to make an homage to the Return of the King game, which I still play. Right, that's with the listing part. It's not that fun to talk about lists, but I just wanted to show this. That's why I always make a list, to be more organized and know at which point you are in the animation process. And then most of the cases you would start from the idle and select states. Selected is used for like when he's alerted. Actually, selected is not the right state, it's alerted, because alerted drives all the attack animations and taunt and death, stuff like that. There are like main 2. It's the idle, which is like default state when you select it and it's like reacts to stuff. And then is the alerted one, which I'll probably show you soon, to the banner carrier. Was like those are the main ones, because all of the other traditions usually come from these. The exceptions are like the run animation, which is not any other animation. The run is simply run, unless you are doing, for example, cavalry. Cavalry does have like pre-run animation. If you remember, the cavalry in Middle-earth has like a way to build momentum before actually going into the run. So that's like the exception. They do have like a pre-run. But usually the run animation is just a loopable run animation that just works. And then build the set in a waterfall manner. What I mean is, if you need, let's say you're going from the alerted, but you need like a fear one, always do the alerted, then do the fear, and if you have another animation that comes from fear, do it then. So always respect the hierarchy, basically. Start with the one that it's first in the state machine. That's why I say idle and selector are probably your first ones most of the time. And then always be aware of transitions. That's why I said look to the reference set. Look what animation come from your animation. Like I said, fear one comes from, actually fear is a bad example. Fear doesn't come from one. But let's say cheer animation. Cheer animation usually comes from alerted. So always keep in mind when you're doing the cheer animation, it comes from the alerted one. So that's why always be aware of the transitions. Because for example, if you don't change the whole animation, you're changing the alerted one, you need to go and remake the cheer, remake the attack, all that stuff. But it's very important here as well, because once you do the alerted scene, you can go from that scene as your starting point, which is very helpful. Right, if you forget about the transition, you want to use the animation from a similar skeleton, use merge animation option, which is something I talked about a bit last time, and now I'm actually going to show you. I can identify 3 ways why you should use merge animation, but as a general rule, you use it every time you need an animation over another existing animation, basically. Okay, so let me give you a real example. Let's pretend I'm doing another animation for my banner carriers. And you'll have to ignore some stuff that I'll talk about later. Let me see, actually, do I have it like recent? Okay, I'll just open it. No, I do not want to change. Default button. Okay, so I know it looks intimidating. I'll explain most of this later. But what you want to remember from here is how to merge anime. So now I have like a fully rigged with all my controllers, with all my constraints applied. This is how it looks. Okay, and now I'm trying to make an animation from scratch. But maybe I want to have like a starting point. Do any of you, if you watched the video I posted, did any of you have an idea if banner carriers animations are from another set or are scratched? This is a trick question.
Wait, I don't think I...
If like, do you have an idea if the animations I did for the banner carriers were actually another unit animations, or if they were made from scratch?
Oh,
what do you think? Yeah.
Could you move around a bit to the camera? And could maybe get.
Okay, I'll just open up the banner carriers. You know what? I'll just show off the new one, just because I can. I'm very proud of this one. Okay. And let's say if...
This looks like an existing animation. Yeah, okay, I can see Lorian Warrior animation.
Ah.
It's
Very close. Very close.
close. Oh,
Okay. It's
Oh,
not the
Glorfindel.
Lorien one. Hmm?
Glorfindel?
No, no, no. Maybe another one.
Oh, damn it! What was this again? The Mython skeleton.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Okay.
It's the
I
Mifflin
get it.
ones.
I see it.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Mifflin one because I didn't want to make like the scratch them. But yes, I did change a lot of stuff because they were using the spear, which I was interested. I wanted to use the spear because the spear is very similar to how they would pose with a big stick, basically, which I used for the banner carriers. But there were animations that, for example, the alerted one, when they had like the stick in both hands, but I needed my banner carrier to have a weapon in the other hand. I wanted him to attack because, for example, in my mod, you can transform them into lieutenants, and the lieutenants is like very powerful. They can actually attack and deal a lot of damage. So having the attack animation was very important. So if I take the alerted one, which I do not remember how it's called. I think it's idle A. Yeah.
I'd like.
Yeah, so idle A is basically the alerted pose. And in the original one, actually I'll just grab the original one as well to have like an overview. Obviously it's another animation, so it's idle A. You know what, I'll just grab all of these. So idly, the stick is held like this. So what I showed you in the first one, when I put 2 IKs on the hand and just animate from there. I can actually show you. Just to have like an extra example for what I showed last time. Whoops. Crashed. Nothing new there. Also, I managed to solve like the screen keeping popping. It's like an easy fix from Matthias.
Oh, the one you posted in Rivora?
Yeah. That one actually worked. It makes no sense, but it works.
Yeah, for me it doesn't work.
I tried on Windows 10, it didn't work. On Windows 11, it works. It's weird. It's weird, yeah. But I did manage to fix it. The only thing is, like last time, I wasn't using my shortcut. I was using like the normal one. That's why it didn't work. Okay, so animation scenes. Alerted idle A. This is how it looks. It is amazing. So yeah, as you can see, I had 2 controllers. Well, I know it's hard to see, but trust me, this is like the one controller, and then this is the other one, and I animated the controllers to have it like this, which is like different, very different from this. Obviously, I changed how the hands are held. I put here an animation, and for example, at the skeleton level, because I created a new skeleton basically for this, you see the weapon is a child of the hand, so it was very easy to have the sword bind to. I didn't even have to use a link constraint, which I also recommend to you if you're not planning the weapon to fall from his hand. Do this, and if you do plan for it to fall from the hand, it will be less pain to do that animation instead of doing the whole rest like with the weapon detached. Right, let's go back to, I got carried away, but let's go back to the bin pose. So what I do is I make a scene where all my rigged components are in place, which I call default bind pose. It's a term that usually it's used in Maya 3D, but you know, bind pose is like the pose you rig your character. And this is how it looks. It's usually how it looks when you do it. And for example, I wanted to do the cheer animation. I knew I wanted to import the Mifflin one. Also in the list, if you remember, in the list, I will go and pull up the list again. I made like a mapping. The B stands for the banner carrier SQL, and this is the animation I'm referencing. This is the attack A. And then you see the M, which comes from Mifflin. There are slightly some variations. For example, run. So I took the second animation of Mifflin, so run B. But at the end of the day, I exported as run A because this is like the banner carrier standard I was going for. Okay. Let's say I want to make the alerted animation. What's important to say is that merge animation has a lot of problems, and I can tell you what to do to avoid some of those. However, it's not a given. Sometimes it won't work anyway. But some of the controllers, like the IK limb controllers, screw over the animation if you place them before merging the animation. So you can see I have no limb IKs to the arms, and I will place them after I merge the animation. Right, so always start from pose. If you have like W skins that have bones rigged to this, remove them because it will screw up the animation. But that's for like if you import other animations. If you use the same SQL, it will work. Okay. So I have the Mifflin SQL here. I built my skeleton from it. Going here. Then go to File, Merge Animation. What's important to note here is that you need to have a scene with the animation that you're targeting. In my case, I'll just open this here. I have a folder with all of the animations from the Mifflin. So if I open another window, file open, I go to here, and these are all the Mifflin animation, just Mifflin animation that is important to be in a scene. And in my case is alerted, which is idle A. So this is like the Mifflin animation, standard, nothing fancy, just you need to save it as a scene because it makes the merger easier. So now that I have this scene, which is called idle A, we have this window. You go to the source file, and then you go to the Mifflin animation you are trying to merge. You go here at the file type, make sure it's 3ds Max, so you can see all your scenes. Then go to idle A. Right. Since I'm starting from scratch, I use this animation. But let's say if you have already some frames, if you want to paste an existing animation, use the paste to existing animation. Either way, just use replace so you can have your animation there. But I'll show you the example of how to do the paste. You can hit match source file. So if you have 60 frames in the target animation, it will just copy all of them. And I use 99% of the time this option, I don't bother. And then you can choose at what frame you want to insert your animation. In my case, it's frame 1. It's no problem, but if you have an already animation here, you can choose like 102 or stuff like that. But let's say I want to insert it at 10. From my experience, always absolute. Very, very rare. Relative gives better results, but most of the time absolute. But which means is the animation you are importing is an absolute coordinate, so it takes the position of the of the global scene. So that's why usually it works better. And this adjusts current time range, meaning if you have 60 animations, 60 key frames, they will auto expand the timeline basically to adjust with the new 60 animation. And then we come with this part. As you can see, I have a lot of stuff here, but usually what it works is this button, which is auto name mapping. What this does is you need to map the animation from one bone to the other. So I have B pelvis here, which is like the base of the hierarchy, and also I have B pelvis here because I use the same skeleton as the Mifflin one. That's why I said it's very important. However, if you have problems with this, you can change. There's no hard. I mean, if I want B spine here at pelvis, I can do that. There's no problem. But you need to keep in mind that at the end of the day, you need that animation. These ones are not really important for the animations. You can leave it like this, just the transform. But if you don't untick these, it's no problem. Usually it's just okay. If you have like a very custom mapping here, let's say the bones are very screwed here because you forgot to name them properly, you can also save the mapping. And when you save the mapping, you can load it every time you need it. In my case, it's not relevant. And when you're happy, just click merge animation. And let's see what's happened. Okay, so I told it at 10, I want my animation to be merged. And look at that. So I had nothing before. And now from the 10th keyframe, it placed my animation. Usually the first key is the bind pose. So that's why it's still in this position. If you don't need it, you can delete it. Okay, but now it screwed my mapping for some reason. But now if I go here, I can see they merged my already existing animation. And this is useful for a number of cases. Now I can add my I keys. As a side note, always try to bind your I keys on the zero keyframe, because 0 is the bind pose of all the scene, so it's cleaner. But let's say now I can go to animation, I key solves, I can gleam, and then use this. Same for this one as well. I key solve, I can gleam solver. Okay, I think I didn't press the right one. Just now I'm realizing I have music in the background, which will probably appear in the recording. Oh well. Anyway, now I have these. So now that I have these, let's say I can move them, so I can select all of these, place it here, and from frame 1 I want I select auto key. Always select auto key when doing like this kind of animation, and I place my hand like so. Now I change how the bind pose acts. Yeah, ignore this part. This part is later animated. Alright, any questions until this moment.
It seems clear so far.
You don't
If
know
you-
what to ask. That's that's like.
Well,
So, okay.
I do have maybe one question. You have this model already with all the IQ solvers and such.
Mm-hmm.
What if you merge animation into a skeleton that has no IQ solvers on them?
It works basically the same because all the algorithm does is copy keyframes from the skeleton you selected to the target skeleton in your scene. So it's no
Okay.
difference. I just showed you rig because I insisted a lot in the previous session that you need to have a very good rig before you start animating, and I'm showing that. But yes, you can combine. Another example, if we're talking about that, another example you can use is combining two animations. For example, okay, since you ask, I'm gonna show for a default one. I think it's a great way to showcase that as well. So let's say alt alerted, which is idle A. And let's say after I do the alerted, so I want to do the next animation after the alerted, let's say the cheer one. So I'll go to merge animation, source. Okay, select this one and it's cheer, which is this one. And you can see it's much easier now. We'll go go to paste to existing animation, match files. This 219 is last frame. I'll just, to be sure, I'll boost to 25 instead. Check absolute, adjust current time range. The mapping is exactly the same because it's the same SKL. Merge. Okay. My auto mapping didn't work, but I'll add like 400. Okay, so you can see all the keys. This is the idle, and then this is the cheer. Right? So this works with default one. As always, the first keyframe in the merge animation is the bind pose. I'll delete it. And then if I take this and move it, you can move it with click. I don't know if I said the last time, but you can move it with click. And I hit play. It's seamless.
Very nice. Yeah.
Yes. So this is the other case. And for example, you just need the cheer animation. And all you wanted to make sure is to have the same ending position. So what would you do? Yes, is like delete this one, except the first frame. So that way you have like, okay, the first frame is kind of not what it should be. Yeah, if you keyframe there, it won't work. But anyway, when you start your animation, it's good to have like a starting point. Let's go back to the bind pose. So in your case, let's imagine we don't have the cheer animation and we're doing it from scratch. We would use merge animation. I'll try to be real quick, just to prove a point. Actually, I was in the right place. I go to the idle A, which is the alerted. Replace because I don't have any animation. Okay, now I have the first one. I'm not interested in the animation itself. I just wanted to make it seamless. So I delete all of these except the first frame. Oops. That was not the first frame. This is the first frame. Okay, so this should be the start. And let's say the end. So I press Shift and copy these keys. And now I can do whatever I want here. I can do the cheer animation in between. So I don't know, put some IKs. I will move the hands around. Let's say auto key. And it's like, this is a very not actual animation, but let's say he goes like this. It will be very slow. But now you made sure that your animation is loopable. And at the same time, it transitions perfectly in the next animation. That's why you save the scene like this from the alerted or merge animation. That's why I said if you forgot to do that, use merge animation. But what would be very easy for you, for example, is you made the alerted animation, let's say. You saved the scene, always save the scene, have separate scenes like I have here. I'll tell you why I have like 2 scenes per anime. But you have like the idle one. Which is like this. Select it. Delete everything except the first one, just to have the position. And now you can save this scene as the cheer one. I'm not gonna actually do that, but just to make sure. And then you can start your animation from this point. This is the advantage of doing the full set of animation. You can make this scene waterfall that I was talking about. And at the same time, you can do the same thing with the transition to selected animation, which is like the idle in selected mode, and then the deselect transition. That is so easy to make when you're doing your stuff, because you're just creating the scene, and the end point of the last of the animation is your new frame. So you just make the scene and delete up until that point and make that your first point. Yeah, I love doing selected animations because they're easy to do. So that's the advantage of doing full sets. Any questions now?
Oh, it's clear.
Okay, nice. I think there's also another, let's say, not way. What's it looking for? What's the word I'm looking for? Let's say you can find another reason to use merge animation, but this covers most of the scenarios. When you want to combine 2 animations, or you have like a starting point, you forgot to add stuff, you're adding your or like in my case, you're not doing an animation from scratch, you're using a base animation from another unit. So the only way you can bring that animation and also see the rig, because that's what we discussed last time, you binded your 3D model, you want to see how it acts in the animation. So importing the animation as just bones, one cut, you use merge animation. So now you can see real time on your model how the animation is going to affect your character. This is the best way.
Perfect.
Yeah, this is the best way to do this. Even though you plan to use this SKL to other 3D models, this one is your reference. This one is your piece. This one must work perfect, because if you respect the standards of this free model, the others will work as as good as this one. That's the important part. Okay, so let's say you want to merge two animations, and the transition itself is different from the original one. For example, I changed the idol. You can see he has his arm like this, not like this. I changed the alerted animation. That means all the transitions from this will also be changed. So if I want to take care of that, what I usually do is I use merge animation. I import my first frame, but the transition itself is not working. And the easy fix I use for that is actually deleting keyframes, and they will interpolate automatically, just like normal animation. For example, I have the tech one animation. This is also from Alerted, and you can see here in my timeline, because I used the Mifflin one, which the cheer one comes from the Alerted of the cheer with the spear in two hands. I actually delete the frames here, and it will interpolate. You can see maybe this arm goes a bit too fast from this position to the up one, but if I play, it's barely visible. So I delete keyframes. Some are more extreme than others. Let's check the cheer one, though I think the most obvious one. I don't know if the cheer is the most obvious one, but I'll get that one. Yes, as you can see here, I deleted a lot more keyframes in order to match the position. Otherwise, it would have looked like, let me use again merge animation to prove this. Cheer. It's C. I'm always thinking paste to existing, match. Let's go to 110. Absolute, adjust, merge. Okay, then adjust it. It's fine. Okay, delete this one. So this is my last animation frame, and now this is like the one. But if I go from 100, okay, show 1. And you can see this is the pose from the Mifflin, and this is the pose from my a pose that I made for my banner carriers. And let me see if I can just select the root real quick. But because the animation itself would have went into that pose, but because I deleted and put my own one, now it's ending how I want. Not like this, but like this. Yeah. So delete the edges. Sometimes the motion is kinda obvious, but you know, you can adjust it. You can actually put some more stuff in there. Also, if you want to have a more, or let's say a better overview of the animation itself, you can see the graph editor. Go to graph editors, curve editor. And don't let this intimidate you. These are just bones. And if you click on position, you can see the positions of the current bone in the animation. And now you can identify problems here way easier. I'll probably show you soon. And also, if you go to rotation, you'll see nothing just because there hasn't any controllers activated. So right click, go to assign controller. It's very visible. And select Euler. Euler, which is like the standard 360 degrees view of the animations. And click OK. And now you can see also the rotations. As always, red is the X, green is the Y, and Z is the blue one. And you can control these are keys basically. So if I grab this and delete them, they will interpolate automatically, and that will also be, as you can see, I messed up here the animation just because I deleted those keys. So you have a better overview in the graph editor or the curve editor how to take care of your animation if this is not enough, if you cannot control it from here, because here you see all the keys, rotations and positions, but there you can see it like if you have problems with the rotation or you want to just rotate on the y-axis a bone, it's easier to do it like here. And you can like drag, move them with left click, just move them. Another thing you can do is copy them, but this is like exactly like in the other part. You press shift or you hold shift and drag. And another thing you can do is scale them. This is a very nice feature if you feel like a motion is too drastic from one position to another. To not interfere with the animation itself, you can just scale. So now it's a it's a smoother movement than it were before. And also if you click a keyframe, let me zoom in a bit. This is like the zoom. You see you have this purple controller gizmo, and then you can make the transition from one key to another the way you want. So this now you can finer curve, you can control these. It's way more powerful to give precision to your animation using the graph editor. And also you can solve some problems with it. For example, let me make a new scene. And I want to import what I want to import. I want to import an animation that it's here, and I know it has some problems. No, I don't think this one has a problem in particular. Die? No, this one seems okay. Maybe land, but something with striking the... Okay, I don't know if you noticed, I'll just zoom out. Here, the bones make like a very weird shake. This is most likely because the animation itself, when you export it or import it for that matter, it's not imported or exported properly.
Yeah, I noticed, but if you import animations with a lot of rotation,
Yeah.
at least with bones, then you indeed get these little issues.
Yeah.
They indeed rotate too extra. Wow,
Yeah, or
it's a difficult word.
also because you can go beyond 360 or lower than 360, they will try to compensate, and sometimes they will go like the threshold, so they will overshoot the animation, and you can pick it and scale it down to whatever you want to be. Okay, it seems this instance of Max is done. It happens when I open the curve editor. It happens. Okay, I'll just use this one. I'll import again. It was the land one. And go to curve editor. And just select bones that have this weird rotation. Select one. Apply the controller. And voila. You can see these are not acting as they should. You can see these error right here. So usually you can just delete them. And this one is, like I said, it should be here because it's the same angle, but they overshoot it and now it's here. So now you can click it and move it here. Also, I think this is kind of okay. This one is probably needed, so I'll delete it. And this one, which is Cape 8, this one shouldn't... it still rotates. I think I need to take care of the position as well. But usually you can identify these kind of errors here. Oh, this is this is Cape. Right, so this one no longer makes that twitch. These ones do. And this is why the curve editor is good. You can see this kind of problems.
Yeah, this is great. This is actually also something I was looking for.
Yeah, it wasn't in my plan to present it, but then I realized while doing animation that this is very important to know when animating. This is like part of the advanced stuff, but it is important. Okay, and now for the last part. So I don't go over too much. The last part is how to do cape animations in Middle-earth 2 using 3ds Max. And I'll present you how I did for the banner carriers. Let me quick check if I haven't used this. What's very important to do when building animation is to export them a lot and see how they behave. Maybe there are some problems, maybe they're not. But it's very important to export a lot. Also of note, I won't show it, but I will mention it, is that when you're building your own SQL, if you export, let's say, an animation, but it doesn't have all the bones, let's say, in it. For example, you deleted the sword bone. But if you export that animation using the SQL, the bone will be placed there. So you can use this to advantage to, let's say, if you don't want to manually put the sword bones from another SQL, use that SQL, let's say, for that animation. And when you re-import it, it's going to be there. It's not going to be animated, but this is an easy way to get bones that are missing from your SQL, let's say, skeleton. Okay, a side note. Right, so I will open one of the banner carriers animations. Let's say one that has an extreme movement. And it's also made from scratch. Okay, maybe something more exaggerated. Let's go with the cheer one. I think the cheer one is... Right. And if I do this... Okay, so you can see these are the rigs I use for the cape, but also a similar rig is used for the banner itself, which kind of behaves like this. It's not a natural cloth simulation. It's more akin like if something is flowing through the water. So it has like this smooth watery effect, which for me it's good enough to make cape animation without losing my mind animating each bone independently. Right, this is like the final rig. Now let me explain a bit how to construct the rig itself and what's important to look out for and how you configure all that stuff. I have a separate folder, animation rigs, and this is the cape setup. This is exactly the same setup I used for Legolas. Right, so this is, I recommend using a separate scene, and when you need it, you just go and merge and import this in your scene. Right, so how this works, it uses spring dynamics, springs, and as in those curly metal thingy that bend when you push them. And there are some downsides, like I said, which I will show you. But for example, if you want to make a cape animation, you take the scale of the animation. I will just reverse engineer this. The first thing you need to do is you'll probably have set up like this. Okay, let me hide. So when you import your animations, it will look like this. This is your cape. These are the bones you need. Okay, I'll fast forward it just not to spend too much time on it. But let's say this is the scale you want to animate. As you can see, they are not in a hierarchy mode. They are not of each other. So we need to fake that in order to get the motion that we want. The first thing you need to do is you put a box on each key. I haven't found the easier method to do this, but basically what I do is go to this key and copy the values from the transform. So it's here, then copy this, copy this, copy this, copy this. So it's in this position. Right, now if you fast forward and do for all the bones, okay, I'll delete the cape. I'll just delete stuff so I can reverse engineer it. It will look kind of like this.
Oh, you forgot the...
Right, yeah. Deleted. So it look kind of like this. When you have, well, these are actually points, not boxes, but it works the same way. Okay, now we need to make the skeleton part that will actually be animated, we go to systems, bones, and this will create bones. But in order to snap these, we're going to go to the snap toggle, right click, and go to pivots. Okay, this is pivots. Okay, now we're going to make like a spline solver. We're gonna keep the IK solver, and it's very important to tick the assign to children. And this is like the bone object, how big it is. Let's see if it's a problem. Yes, it is. It's a very big. Okay, and let's go for 0.4. I think that's a good number. Okay, maybe. Oh, but I forgot to snap. Okay, then go to this, then this, then this. You just left click. And now I right click to put it in place. Okay, right. I think it's not this one, it's actually this one. Okay. Actually, it's this stick or this stick. Spline IK solver. So you can see it snaps. And now if I click right here, this menu would appear. So it's important to be on Spline IK solver, not the one previously. All you need to make sure here is to generate the helpers. So keep this one. You have multiple ways of helpers. I use box, and also the size of the box I want to be 0.3. Okay, okay, it's a bit small. But now if I zoom in, you can see this blue box. This was generated by the same algorithm. I will unlock. And if I do this, you know, they are link constraints for this specific spline. That's how these are called splines. And you can see if I move, it tries to mimic the movement. So in order not to distort the bones. Okay, you need to do that for all of these. I think I can do it real quick. Bang, 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 bang. Right click, 0.3. Okay, and then the final one. Yeah, this is how in Battle for Middle-earth skeletons are defined. Okay, this one is not good. Again, bang, 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 right click, 0.3. Okay. And now, since you've done this, you can delete, if they bother you, you can delete these points. You're interested in these ones, which were created with the spline itself. Right. Now I'm gonna go on each of these and do some magic. In the sense that I'm gonna assign some values. But the values itself, I found them through a lot of testing, and these are the best values that I found that were working for my capes. If you find or if you want to change, don't be afraid. If you find better values for these, go ahead. More power to you. But these are the values that I use. So go to this tab, which is the motion tab. Then having this pointer clicked, you go here and you have like this little button here. You press that and find the spring, which is usually at the bottom here. Okay. This menu will appear, but it's not necessarily needed. You can exit. You have these values here as well. So the mass is 300, and the drag will change to 0.1. Then select the self-influence. And I think the value should be around 0.1 and 10. Then the next one should be heavier. That's the whole reason we're doing these values. Should be heavier than the previous one. So I'll do again the spring. And this time I'll put 600, double. And the same values as previous. But make sure you select this before you change. Is the safe influence. You can influence other forces, but in my experience is not great. And here I'll go overboard. And on the spring one, I'll go to 120. Mass 0.1. 0.1 as well. 10. Oh, I forgot to click this, so now I need to put those values again. 0.1. 10. Okay. So what will this do? I also have this helper bone. As you can see, it can be not really a bone, but can be an object. I'll click this. Animation, constraints, link constraint. And I'll do all of this for these as well. I won't show you now, but you know, you clone this method as well here. And now this bone will control all of these in a original. Okay, and now if I go to auto key, let's see if the magic happens. Let's say if I go here and put a bone here and I hit play. Okay, let's go over bone and make like 300 flames. And then the position here, I will copy it to 100. And if I hit play now, as you can see, the bone will do like this wiggly motion, which is perfect for cape animation. Yeah, and this is how you build a rig using Spring Dynamics.
That's great.
Yes,
Really?
is very handy. However, now I go into disadvantages of this approach, and you won't like them. Okay, so the downside of, as you can see, this acts on its own without actually, let's say, animating anything. I just put the key here and a key here. In Evo, that was my last key. So basically the animation should stop there. They're still going because the animation itself is procedurally generated while using the Spring Dynamic. And this creates a lot of problems when you want to make loopable animations, because you want to end here and make it loopable, but because you move this, he's still going and makes this crazy animation. And also, just because you put him in this position doesn't mean the animation itself would end here as well. So if I go to 100, as you can see, I went to 100 and it's a different position, even though this is the only object I animated. I put keyframes and it's exactly the same position it's here, because these has its mind of its own. Unfortunately, I haven't found a very good solution for this. You can, let's say, try and position these cubes. Let's say you go here, You put a keyframe on here, and let's say you want this object to have the same position. But if you have like a keyframe here as well, it will make your animation in a way stranger. It affects it, but you know, if you're
But
making
ideally,
if you make it like the selected state in which you start from this point, oh boy, he will animate it in your next. Ooh, okay, a bit too much. In your next scene. Okay.
but I do have a question. It even though it does not end at the right moment, does the animation end up at some point the same as the beginning?
No.
No, not
I
at
mean,
all.
yes, it does, but probably 300 frames later.
But could you not like theoretically have the animation end up at, let's say, 300 frames, and then you just compress it into 100?
But that you can do after you export it, because if you do it while creating it, because it has its the spring dynamic has its mind of its own, so it will compress also the movement and it will be very nasty to work with. But yes, the only solution I found for this kind of approach is to export the animation as it is. And I'm going to show you with what I have been battling for the banner carriers. And you can see I have this new scene, last frame position. So what I did is, if I take this, all of the animation for the banner carrier, for the banner itself, are baked. And what I do is delete this part and copy the first frame here. So you can see from this position, it will interpolate to the default size, which is also this one. So I cut again the ends and keep one of them in order to make it loopable. Some animation is gonna be pretty jarring. Let's take the cheer animation. I think that's one is way more visible. So it goes from the idle one, which is perfect. It goes there, which is a very heavy animation. And here, I just go back because it's the same frame like here. I just copy pasted. And also you can do this if you like, this is like the idle pose. You use the merge animation tool, put the first frame here because this is like the transition. Delete the first one so it goes into the position what you are actually animating. And at the end, again, you clone the first one or the one that you merged from the previous animation. Delete the end and place this one here. And this way you make it loopable. And this is the same for the capes. As you can see, I made it. So it goes in this position.
Oh, sorry. Continue.
No, I mean, like, you can see here, the movement itself wanted to go in that direction. But if I scroll down, it will go into default back. So this is the moment you see the magic disappearing. If you are looking for these, they are there. This is like the downside of this whole approach. However, you cannot make it react naturally. If you take a look at the banner carriers, at the cloth of it, it's full of these kinds of stuff because in order to make it loopable, you have to forgo realism. That's the whole thing. So these kind of things are acceptable, as long as they don't break your immersion. Yeah. So this is the downside, the biggest downside of this approach. But let's say I go to cheer animation. Let's say I imported this. All I need to do is, if it's a very big motion, I animate it by hand. So each frame, you see, each frame I put this, a keyframe here to the position, and the banner itself will just act on its own accord. You don't need to move unless, like I said, if you have like a very weird position, you can also animate the cubes as well, but remember to put them in the same place as they started. Otherwise, they will keep their same position. For example, just giving a quick example. If you started with the animation like in this position, okay, this frame. The default position after you finished, okay, it's a bit strange. Okay. The spring doesn't act like a gravity. It wants to go in the same position it was before. All right. So now it will go back in this position. It's not acted by gravity. It's acted by the position you started with. So for example, if here I go that way, the default position it will end up in will be like the position you calculated. So it will be something like this. Probably if I go 150 more frames. The default position it ends up in is this one, which is basically the keyframe you made here. Even though you don't see it, because this is, as you go through the timeline, it calculates the positions. And all it does is interpolate these using the spring dynamic. So what you want to do, if this is like the position of your banner, let's say this is one. Always make sure this is the last keyframe. So after all the animation is done, it will return. Okay. I did something. Okay, I see what's happening. So if you have a problem like this while animating the cape, where after what frame it starts to act weird, usually the solution I get is put a key on every frame that changed. And now it will act weird. But be careful with this. If you go like long motions, it will act very weird. And put a keyframe here. I think it's because I changed the first frame. But usually it goes back, but as you can see, it takes a long way before it goes back to its real position. And this is the default one, you know, because it's not, like I said, not acted by gravity. Yeah, so I use this rig for the banner. I use this rig for the cape, and also I have an extra rig here, which has like some extra sleeves my banner carrier uses. So this is a great example to use it wherever you have like moving cloth. This one, for example, works very well in most cases. The cape is very big, so if you have issues, you'll see them more in your face than the others, but this one works pretty nice. But yeah, the downside is after I export, I need to do the cutting of the ends for this part, this part, this part. But at the end of the day, it's a very nice animation, which I think was worth it to do. But also, if you don't want to manually do it, Also import with the helper bone. That also helps a lot. And prepare everything for the exporting part. For example, these bones, if I go to V3D tools, they are not marked for export, not even as bones. Also these. The only thing that are for export are the actual bones. Which I forgot to show. That once you do this rig, you need to link constrain the bones to the cubes. So you select the bone, animation, constraint, link constraint to the cube. And preferably to do this when you're not in auto key mode, watching on the first, the 0 frame. So now all the bones will follow your rig, and at the end of the day, as you've seen, only the bones are exported, and they are moving and rotating as the spine with Spring Dynamics acts. Okay, I know this is a lot of information, but this is like the only way I found out how I can do this in 3ds Max. And as well, this being recorded, you can go back to this, and if you have any questions after this, you can ask me in private or on the 3rdage Discord. I'm usually active there as well. Okay. Okay, a final note, like I said, you should make a separate scene. So basically, if you have your scene like this and you want to start animating, you go to File, Merge. Okay. Okay, and these have my rigs, and I put cap setup all, hit OK. I have duplicates. Usually you should delete your bones beforehand, but let's say auto rename and use the scene material, so you don't change your materials if you have meshes attached. Now you have your right, and now if I go to my helper bone, it's somewhere around here. Yeah, you can see it pulls all the rig with it. And in some animation, I can just select my helper bone and put a link constraint on it. And if I do this with an animated object, if you animate it, it will move with it. Let's give you a simple example. Put auto key, set a key here, and put the root here and making like a weird rotation. Okay, this cape makes no sense, so I'll just delete it. But as you can see, the cape follows the spine bone and then acts physically based. Sorta physically based. Right, I think this session was long enough.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Any final questions?
No, not from me. I have to experiment myself, but I will also experiment a bit with that. What you call with the end keyframes for the cloak bones. Maybe I will be able to find a way.
Yeah, if you do, please share.
If I do, I'll let you know. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, for the moment I'm done with the animations for the mod, but you never know, in the future I might need some extra shortcuts.
Of course.
Yes. Any help is good help. Well, thank you for paying attention for this long. There's no more stuff I need to present. I kind of presented everything. Some final tips. Compile skeletons if possible, like I showed you before. Some skeletons have the same topology and naming. Use this to your advantage. For example, Haldir has the same one as the Corsairs, and this was a big help for me because I could scale the SKL and then import all the animation, export them with the new SKL, and use it. Now I have a bigger Corsair because of this. Also, group bones to manipulate easily. This is something I showed in the previous session. Like I said, if you plan on working on set, use scenes, especially from the alerted idle for transition animation. Like I said, if you have incomplete bones in your SKL, export the animation incomplete as it is and then import it so to have the bones in the SKL places automatically. And this is like the last tip, which I already showed you, to make the animation loopable in the case of Kepe animation, but not only, just to make animation loopable or consistent with the next animation. Export the animation, re-import it, delete the keyframes at the end, clone the first ones to make the animation loopable. Okay, so this was the parts that I already showed. Creating a procedural cape. And creating a spline using the spline bone tool and the spring modifier. And this was all. Was like a recap.
I have to go now. I have no more questions. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll just myself at some point.
Yeah, I'll end the recording now.